high-tech area. We're in the financial sector, however, it does say a lot about the company I'm working with. I'm proud to be part of that. And I'm going to share with you what I like and some part that I don't necessarily agree or like with that, but obviously it doesn't matter where you go, there's always pros and cons, there's things of that nature. The first thing is about the culture and diversity. First American is really, it's a big company, it's a public trading company on the stock market, but it carries somewhat a family type of environment where you work with your people in your company, work together like a family, even though it has up to, depends on the time you look at that. Right now, probably about 19,000 employees worldwide. We have offices in Canada, in the Philippines, in India. A lot of office in Asia was rooted because we had a need for data entry. It's cheaper that way, obviously, to hire data entry personnel to enter data to our system for us to provide to our customer. And a lot of our data are public data. It's public domain, is not secret or anything like you can imagine. We just take the public data, turn around, massage it, and organize it and provide back in a fast delivery and in a friendly manner so that the customer can take advantage of that rather than they have to gather and harness the data themselves, right? So that's pretty much what it is. That's what we started with the offshore operation. And since early 2000, around 2002, 2003, when a few years after the, like the .NET tech boom and things like that, a lot of American companies start reaching out to do offshore development for software development as well. First American's no exception. We were actually one of the first financial institutions to start our offshore development. We have a co-development model where we have software engineer, software developer working offshore and onshore here. So essentially we want to establish a around-the-clock 24/7 development, just like any other operations that you can imagine. So that has the positive and negative side, and I can share with you a little bit about what it means in my experience. But the first 5 years for us doing that model is pretty rough for us. I was a manager at the time because when I first joined the company, I was a software developer, just like what you want to be after you graduate from the school, getting a job that being a coder, programmer, software engineer, depends on which company you work for. They can call different things, but it's all about coding, right? It's all about zeros and ones, about writing certain languages and instruct the computer to do certain things that you want it to do, right? So when I was a manager, it was very difficult for me to deal with the offshore developers. It's 15,000 miles away. The time is totally different. It's 12 or 12 and a half hours different. When we sleep, they awake, and vice versa, right? Communication is hard. There's accent. There's communication for voice always hard. Sometimes we can do video conferencing, very limited at the time, but still it's very, very difficult, very challenging, and the culture is also different. People in India, in particular, they have a way of thinking different than our mindset here in general, and also sometimes it's hard to understand for them to understand why we think and we instruct them the way that we do, and vice versa. But I gained a lot of experience with that. In the last 5 years or so, I think that I start realizing that it's actually a very good model for our company to expand in the future. It's just like anything else, it takes time to mature and work through all the challenging in the process, in the collaboration between different team members, between different culture, different things, beside the technical, right? So that made me stick with First American for a long time, just because of the fact that every day I come to work, there's always new things. Whether it's a technical problem, it's a technical challenge, or it's a human side of it, the collaboration, the process, things that we can improve. We used to do waterfall development, and then now most companies, including ours, doing more agile kind of software development principle. So we be more nimble and we can interact more effectively with our business unit, which is very key. Because companies like First American, 50%, for you to be successful, you need to be good at both. 50% of the domain business knowledge and 50% of your technical expertise, right? And there's different technical expertise that you can participate in. We have a wide range of opportunity. You can do infrastructure work. Some of you, even though you may learn coding now, but once you start working in environment, you figure, oh, maybe I like better to work with hardware, with infrastructure, with networking. You never know. Because a lot of time when I was software developer, I had zero knowledge about network infrastructure in general. Other than when I was in college, I took a class about TCP/IP, about networking. But to me, it was just more for me to pass the test, really, right? Because a lot of concept there is just theory to me. I had no clue how it works in a sense. I just basically reiterate what I was taught, and so I can pass a test. But when I start working, I start connecting the dots and figure, oh, that's what it means. And it's somewhat very interesting because a lot of times you think about application like Uber, right? You say Uber is just about, it's a taxi service, quote unquote. It's just like it pick you up wherever you are. You have an app. You just say, hey, I need to get a ride, right? And then I'm gonna pay it. So if you think about it, it's very simple application. But behind the scene, it takes a lot of work to make that app stable. If you think about it, how many endpoints that have to be connected. How you determine the fastest route, who's the best driver, most available driver closer to the proximity of the people who place the call, right? And the worst part is if your network crash, if your application crash, end of story, right? People will upset, they will go to the competitor, they go to Lyft or whoever, or arrange some other way, and then the company start tanking because your application is not performing. And that's a big challenge. A lot of companies dealing with, right? Because there's always competition. If you look at Facebook, why is Facebook was so successful? They were not the first to have social networking, things like that. MySpace, if some of you remember in the days, MySpace was very popular, right? But Facebook kicked their butt, right? Because MySpace crashed, almost daily. Facebook never crashed, right? Because that's the principle from Mark Zuckerberg. From day one, he said, whatever I do, number one goal, it should never crash, right? So the engineers at he hire is make sure that everything is up running 24/7, period, right? So that's a big challenge if you think about it. Uber in the same way. There's a lot of access point, and the application could crash any given moment if you think about it. It has a lot of factors into it, but it took a lot of good engineering and planning and design so that they can keep their application up and running the way they are, right? So a lot of organization is serving business, but if you think about it, behind the scene in the backbone is always technology. That's why the opportunity for you guys out there is a lot. It's not just so much that, oh, I got to work with Google, I got to work with Amazon, I got to work with the big tech companies. There's standard financial institution like First American, they have a needs too. They have to keep the system up and running to serve our customer, right? So that being said, it's a different kind of challenge. It's like I said, it's a mix of business domain. I got to learn what a title policy is, what how people finance the real estate transaction, how do banks give out loans, right? Because a lot of you may or may not be exposed to the home purchase process, but it's not as simple as buying a car. When you buy a car, it's a lot simpler. As long as you have decent credit, you say, hey, I have some down payment. Sometimes you don't even need to put down down payment, right? I say, hey, this is a monthly. Can you make it? I look at your credit. Okay, looks like you okay. I'm gonna give you a loan, right? But the house is a lot bigger investment. It's a lot more expensive, especially in California, right? So when you buy a house, they have to make sure that look at two parts. They look at history of the house you're interested in, whether that house from the current owner is it free and clear, meaning that does the current owner commit any kind of action in the past that might have somebody put a lien on their house, right? Because maybe that person hire plumber, and then has a dispute, and never paid the plumber the amount that he's supposed to do, right? The plumber brought him to court, and then he won, and then the court put a lien on the house, say, hey, you did not pay the plumber $10,000. So what it means is, the person in that house, the owner, can continue to stay in the house until he sell the house. When he sell the house, then the bank or the lender has to look at that and say, hey, you still owe this plumber $10,000. So whatever money you get out of this transaction, the $10,000 goes to that plumber first, right? To settle on that, so that the next owner doesn't inherit your debt, right? That's what it means. That's what we do at First American, is to look at the history of property, and then make a judgment call to help the banks, the lenders, to make a decision, hey, is it good transaction to give out $200,000 loan, right? Because it's a lot of money if you think about it. They do like millions of loan applications like that, it's billions of dollars, right? So they have to make sure that the deal is good, and that's what we do. We provide information about these data via whether web application or integration endpoint with B2B. A lot of our customer are B2B, business to business. That means that we provide data in bulk, or they have direct UI application that they build, and they integrate with our endpoints to give them the data they need. So we give them XML data, we give them things via web services, or however they want to interact with us. So there's a lot of things when you go into real life. Even if you think about the data we collect is something that's public domain in the courthouse that we have acquired, for the images, the documents that we scan. And a lot of time in the past, we achieve that by doing data entry. So there's a document the courthouse recorded. We give instruction to the keyer. The keyer look at that. They scan for certain keywords, they key in certain data elements, and then they enter to our database, and then we can build the application to access those data, right? But nowadays, with technology, we use different things like we OCR the document, right? So that way it's more automated. When we OCR the document, then we have to have machine learning of some kind so that we can extract the data in a proper way. Obviously, it's not going to replace 100% of the human. There's no machine, everybody knows by now, there's no machine can be equal to a human, right? A human brain is so amazing. Scientists are still very amazed at how our human brain react and solve different problems, right? Very complex problems that machine cannot do. But machine, on the other hand, can compute things a lot faster than human brain, right? Because it's just that you have gathered more resource, more hardware, and then make it work faster than human brain, in theory. So OCR work the same way, probably 90%, 95% of the time, you get it right. The other 5, 10% of the time, we have to rely on humans. So we have to build a workflow system when we have a confidence factor that this is right, then we just fully automate it. But if it's not, then we kick out to another process. Then it involves some human examination of the document that is of concern or unsure, then it will complement the solution. So there's a lot of opportunity if you think about when you first start, First American Title, it was about, providing history of the property, no big deal. What's the big deal about doing software development about it, right? But as you can see, once you start working inside any organization, even like First American, then you start realizing there's a lot of opportunity for things to be automated. And a lot of thing is, it just doesn't come from business. A lot of time business say, hey, I have this need, but they only have a requirements per se that come at a very high level. Because business person, they always busy, they connect to the customer, they would just say, hey, I only want to get this thing done. How to get it done, I don't have an idea. You guys need to come up with, tell me what the proposals are, right? Then I will pick what I think will be the best solution, right? So a lot of time, that's a good thing for us to come up with a proposal. We start working on prototypes. We're working on some proof of concept to propose, hey, is this a good thing or it's not? We scrap the idea, try another thing, right? That's why agile development is very good fit for what we do and for most companies nowadays. Because it gives the flexibility of, I don't have to define all the requirements upfront because nobody knows what the requirements are upfront, right? It's not like DoD type of projects where they have to build a missile, you know, they have to build a, so that, you can launch to Mars or some other place in the universe. So those are the things that more, pre-planned, and you have to take a lot of things to plan ahead to put those things together. But a lot of business is more about trying out the ideas and scrap it if it doesn't work out. Then it doesn't cost you so much for planning, right? So that's what it is. I just want to explain a little bit about the different type of thing, how I got engaged into different projects in my company, and then how I got involved, how I learned about the environment, how I learned about networking, about infrastructure, working with the networking team. Right now, or in the past 20 years, for the most part, I'm focused on the software development side only. But I do interact with different groups of software or hardware engineers who are focused on load balancer, device, firewall, and things like that. So I learn from them as well. That's another thing I like about my job is I do learn about those aspects, even though I don't claim to be an expert in those areas. But at least I learn enough so I can understand how things work. Because if you think about it, it's behind Facebook, behind Amazon, there's thousands, tens of thousands, or even hundreds of thousands servers sitting behind to serve your request. There's no way, there's only a single server. And not to mention they have distributed servers where, in Asia they have different kind of server farm or cloud to serve all those requests, to distribute the load, right? So all those things takes a lot of good planning for understanding how to do load balancing so that you can spread the load evenly or optimally so that you can build the application work with those devices. So at some point you have to get to know enough to understand working with a hardware engineer to optimize your application as well. It's not just write the code, hey, let's put it, write a message to the console. That's what you always learn, the hello world type thing, but then it makes you think about, I have to build an application and connect different pieces together, right? And I'm sure you've been through that process from day one, as simple as hello world program until the way you are today. And hopefully, when you start working out the real world, it's going to be a lot more learning for you. Think about this is only a starting point. It just gives you the fundamentals that can take you anywhere you want to go and whatever you want to do in the future, right? Because a lot of time, even I spent a full 4 year and graduate school for another 2 years in college, learning about applied math and computer science and things like that. But to be honest with you, when I start working, I really, for the most part, I have no idea what it is, right? We all have to go through that, at some point in time. It's the good thing is that education prepares us, the fundamentals, and take us to the next level. And whether you can make a difference or not, it's up to you. Because really, if you keep, inquiring, your mind has always about learning new things, look at new technology all the time, you can be successful. Because technology goes so fast. Nobody can keep up with technology the way that it's going, right? Especially nowadays. Every 2 to 3 years, I look back and say, wow, it's different technology. The concept is the same, but the technology advanced, right? There are things that 5, 10 years ago, I look back and say, hey, this thing is. I used to have to spend a lot of effort to make this work. Now it's like it's so handy. It's just somebody already created some module that I can just plug in and make it work. Right? So it's a lot nicer, a lot more advanced. But that means that you just have to continue to keep learning. That's what I like about being First American. And I'm sure a lot of other companies nowadays, if they really invest in technology, that's what you want to find out. You want to find out companies where it continue to invest in technology so that keep your job, not like a boring 8 to 5 kind of job and going there and saying, what do I do today? Do I write this email and then go home or whatever, right? So something that to keep you interested in what you want to do, right? Let's see. So that being said, for example, right now, financial sector is, there's certain requirement restriction. The bad part about in the financial industry, at least for First American, is a lot of times we more skeptical about doing cloud development, putting data on the cloud, things like that, right? Because we do have big customers like BPPE, Wells Fargo, all the big lenders in the country, and they are very scared when it comes to handing data or their information that exposed to the cloud that maybe have more chance to be exposed to hackers and others, right? But we do start a new cloud development. We start migrating our environment to cloud. And that's says a lot about, try to work with our customer a lot of time, that we have to work with the customer, explain to them how the model works, how to expand that so we can expand our application offering through the cloud as well. So we try to keep up with the technology as everybody else does and try to expand in that way as much as we can. Just to summarize, basically, I hope that you continue what you learn here and really enjoy the journey that you just started. Be a programmer, be a developer, or maybe become a lead or manager like I did. Depends on what you want to see in the future. But whatever you do, make sure that keep learning and never stop asking questions, challenge people. A lot of time I learn is that don't just accept things as facts and just challenge yourself, challenge your coworker. There's many ways to solve a problem, especially with the way the technology is progressing. There's no right or wrong solution. It's just whichever solution works best for your situation, for your environment, for your company, and that kind of thing. Right? So that's all I want to share with you guys, and I'm gonna leave the floor to be open for questions. Things that you ask, okay, how do I learn about this? I learned this specific thing in this academy here. How would it be beneficial to my future, or what have you? Or what's a chance for me to get a job? Doesn't matter what type of question you have, just feel free to ask. I'm trying to answer as much as I can. And go ahead.
When you're hiring people, what is the biggest or most common mistakes you see?
Okay, very good question. The biggest, and it's all subjective, and I have to be honest with you because based on your hiring manager, right? So everybody's different, but I can only speak for myself. I've done hiring for the last 15 years or so, so I do have my own guidelines standard. And my principle is the following. We are all humans. We're not perfect, right? Doesn't matter how smart you are, people always have the positive side and negative side. So things that I'm looking for employees or potential candidates are the following. People are not afraid to fail, okay? And one of the things that I like to ask my candidates are, tell me your experience when you fail on something. Doesn't matter to be programming or coding or anything in your life, when you fail. And then the people who I ask to say, I see the most common trait, because a lot of times people feel like, oh, I need to talk about positive things. So I need to talk about, oh, this is my success. I've done my projects. I always on time. I never miss a deadline. Those are the people I see that at least for me, I turn them down. Because in the software development world, it's very challenging to be on the deadline. I have to be honest with you. The problem is not just because it depends on you. There's many other factors, right? You work in a team, you have business stakeholders who may change their mind, right? The requirement they told you last week, they say one way, they meant a different way, right? You never know, right? So at the end of the spring cycle iteration, we deliver the feature that we thought as a developer that they want us to do, and they say, no, this is not what totally wrong. It's not what I expect you to do, right? Then it comes to like this, say, hey, you guys missed it, you guys didn't do that. There's a lot of things like that. So when you start, even your first job, or especially for a later job, I'm looking for people to be really honest. Meaning, as a coder, how many times that you've been stuck on one problem, and then even Harrison or whoever your instructor is tell you, hey, this is how it's supposed to work. It should work, right? You put the code in, you thought it would work. Either it crashed or it didn't work. And then you spend some time, 2-3 hours. And then later on you say, oh, it's a silly mistake. Sometimes I missed just a semicolon or something in my if statement or something that I did that's silly, right? I didn't expect this to be a null value somehow. When it's called a certain condition, it's past a null value. And my program, my code, didn't have a known exception handling. right? And then it crashed. But it works 95% of the time, but 5% of the time it crashed, right? And then you debug the code, you spend like hours and hours, couldn't figure out, you got frustrated, right? And that's what I'm looking for people that to be speaking of for those, right? Because I know that, I went through that struggle, is that writing code is not about like math. To me, when I studied math, I thought it was hard, especially algebra or even calculus, right? It was hard, but a lot of time in math, to me, it's more well-defined. It's easy for me to comprehend once I understand it because 2 + 2 = 4. It's always that. When you write a code, behind the scene is still that way though. If you really think about it, the machine doesn't lie. The machine never fails, right? But the problem is how many permutations of the code that you write that will generate different scenarios that it may trigger a failure. Your brain sometimes may not think of all those, that's what it failed. So you may commit a task to your business stakeholder, say, hey, I think I can get this done in 3 hours. Then you're stuck with this debugging for a day and you couldn't get out of it, right? There's certain times you get stuck in that and then you're late, right? So I rather looking for people who say, hey, I've done it many times in my life, even if you never have a job. Let's say you start with learning here, it's your first time, your first encounter with programming. You can say, hey, I done this project or assignment. I thought I would get it done in 3 hours, but end up like a week. Here's why. I struggle, but the good thing about that is the good candidate will show that, hey, even though I was stuck in an hour, I didn't quit. I didn't give up, right? I continue and I finish it, right? That's the key for you to be successful candidate, to be high as well as successful later in your life. Because developer, you're looking for that. That's the reason why Google, they set up an environment where, hey, I'm gonna feed you all day long, right? Have video game in their company. I visit their campus here. My previous boss, ended up moving and working for Google on January. He invited me one day for open house. I went there, it's cool, because everything's great, right? The environment's nice, the food is always there, the game room, you can go and play whenever you feel like. But people spend like 15, 16 hours a day there because that's their home, right? They're coders, they never give up. They're gonna continue to solve problems, right? That's what makes people different. Then people, oh, I'm gonna work here, and they say, 8 o'clock I'm here, 5 o'clock I'm gonna be out, right? I don't care, whatever it is. So, however, people work for me, First American, I don't say, hey, I expect you to work 15, 16 hours either, but you're responsible. Someday you say, hey, I don't have a problem. I work short schedule. I go home, pick up my kids, bring them to the park or whatever I want to do, right? That's fine with me too. But someday, we got to solve this problem. The customer's banging on our door, say, hey, we got to solve this, and they're gonna stay, or they even go home, remote it, and then try to get it fixed. Or in our case, we pass it on to our offshore developer. Hey, I got so far, I got stuck, can you continue? And then while you sleep and they pick up, and then the next morning, you pick up again, and they may give you some other clue, and then together we solve the problem, right? So that's what, kind of long answer for your question, I hope answer you right, meaning that the way I look at candidates or people to hire is that people need to be realistic, need to be honest, and has a problem solving in their mind, right? And you gotta like what you do, right? You're not gonna waste money. I know that you pay a lot. It's a big investment for you to go to this academy, right? So you better like this. If you don't like it, you better back out and find something else, because that's what it is. That's your life from now on. I hope that you continue to stick with it, is that, hey, you challenge yourself, and sometimes you expect to be stuck for a long period of time. I have a daughter, she's a sophomore, and I was telling Harrison that she never really interested in programming. I don't want to force anybody on my kids to do something like what I used to do, right? But this summer, I said, hey, maybe you want to give a shot, learn about programming, right? Just do on your own, so that because your school doesn't offer that class yet, you cannot take it, so why don't you just figure it yourself, right? So she started, first thing is, instructor said, hey, go install Java, JDK, and install Dr. Java. She has a Mac, she put it on and the Mac say, hey, your software is corrupted. Just download it, how come it's corrupted, right? Did it again, and she asked me, I looked at, yeah, it said that, let's try again. Still corrupted. I said, okay, then that means that it's something different. It's not just about the downloads corrupted, right? It's something else. And then I told her, hey, go Google online. Nowadays it's so great. You can Google almost everything, right? What people say. And then she found one blog saying, hey, this is because, Mac is really controlling this because it's published by unknown developer, that kind of thing. So it doesn't allow to do it. But you can get around it. You can go to the Mac settings and change the security setting to be allowing this to be running, right? Simple things like that that's what make you advance, meaning that you run against a brick wall, whether it's how big the wall is, doesn't matter. You get stuck, you find ways to go around it. That's what the candidates that we're looking for. We're looking for people that really looking around that. It's not so much of how much you learn about, I learned about JavaScript, I learned about the syntax of JavaScript, and I feel so great and very knowledgeable about that. I'm not looking at people like that. I'm looking for people for fundamentals, right? I may ask them questions about simple logic. Things like, I say, hey, why are manhole covers round? Right? You go around on the street, right? Normal life. Have you ever asked yourself or being asked why they design the covers round instead of square or something else? And you may want to think about that too, by the way, just to wonder why they designed that as a round shape instead of square, instead of rectangle or triangle, right? Why? Why is it round? That's no, technically speaking, there's no right or wrong answer for that. It depends on how you answer the question, right? Obviously there's an obvious answer that you can look for, but it doesn't really matter. It matters how you get to answer those questions. And that speaks a lot about you, because you are the kind of person, hey, I'm not gonna say I don't know. That's the worst thing I wanna see about candidates who interview with me, right? When you ask them, they say, I don't know. Sure, I asked you a lot of things that most people don't know. But I wanna see, even if you don't know, how would you go about to solve it, right? Because the world, especially technology, like I mentioned, is a lot of unknowns, right? Things that it's progressing so fast, there's no answer to a certain solution out there. You have to figure it yourself out, or partner with somebody that may help you to come to a conclusion. So I'm looking for people who say, hey, I don't really know the answer, but here's what I would do. I would go to the next 3 steps to try to figure out a solution. And maybe speak out your mind, say, hey, I'm gonna try this first, and go to the next step to figure out. Using this example, for example, I think that the manhole cover is round because based on geometry, this may be a design or shape that make it roll over easy or something like that, right? But sometimes it may create some other negative or aspect of it, right? So you can speak about the positive and the negative side of one fact, right? When you speak up your mind like that, it's actually carry a conversation with the interviewer. It actually tells a lot about who you are, how you think, right? Because a lot of times I don't expect people to answer the question correctly. And if somebody answers every question correctly, then I start wondering, something is not right, because in a sense, either this guy is a genius or he's just well prepared. Somehow he kind of been an experienced interviewer, so he knows this type of question, right? But I'm looking more for people like a human who really express themselves as who they are, right? Because as you all know, we all grown up, we all know we are different, right? We grow up different background, we're being raised different way. And we go to school, we learn different things, and we observe things differently, right? That's the most important thing. The same things here, I can say, this thing is round, but you say, no, it's not really round, it's like oval. This is blue for people who color-blinded. I'm not trying to offend somebody, but really, my wife used to work with a guy, he argued with my boy, and she didn't know he was color-blind. He said, this is blue, she said, it's purple. Right? But that's how we are. We look at things differently. That's how I see approach, and there's nothing wrong with it, right? There's nothing wrong with him saying that's blue, right? He see it that way. And as long as he believes in that, that's value in that, right? So I hope I answer your question, or you think that, okay, good. Any other question? Yes.
So you spoke about offshoring or having data entry offshore, and you also spoke about the power that kind of is in offshoring some of your developers, because you can have this 24/7 model, right? Do you see, at least at First American, that's kind of a trend that a lot of developer jobs are kind of going into the foreign sector, or is that just something, again, that kind of like data entry?
It's already started going, like I said, in the early 2000s. When we were there in 2003, they have a Silicon Valley in India. That's Bangalore. That's the city name. If you never heard about that, that city, literally, you go, if you drive in that downtown, that city, it's just like San Jose. It's buildings left and right. You can see Oracle, you can see Microsoft, you can see Google, you can see Amazon. I mean, you name it. And also, there's European companies there. Everybody's in that town. Okay. Back then, I would tend to agree what you just say, meaning that the Western country like U.S. and Canada and European countries, they try to save money. They expand their operation over there just to say, hey, instead of hiring a software engineer here, cost me 5 to 10 times more than I would hire an Indian software developer with equal intelligence in a sense, right? But that model is kind of really phased out because, like anything else, some companies pull back, right? Some company expand more, some companies does pull back because they figure, hey, I save this much, but the overhead of communication, the overhead of, because the Indian software developer, they don't grow up here, they don't understand the culture here. For example, like my company, it took a long time for my engineers to understand what title is. Right? For people here, they understand, oh, even if you're new to this, it makes sense to you, or you buy the house, you have to borrow money. A lot of time in India, when you buy a house, you better have all your cash, right? People is not gonna trust you to lend you the money because they're afraid that you're gonna run away with, right? It's a different system. And also, the title is declaring that this is your owner of this property in the U.S. It's just, I don't know if you know, but when I explain to you, understand why, because to record that, it's a public recorded document in the courthouse. It doesn't take anything else other than take a notary person, and you know how easy it is to get a notary signature here, right? You pay $5-10 or sometimes free, you go to your bank. As long as that person has a license, which is very easy to get, everybody can get a license to be a notary, right? You take a course, pass a test, and then you become a notary, right? So let's say I become a notary, I'm a friend of you, right? So you come in and you look at your neighbor address, you say, hey, I'm trying to record this document, work with me, I record the document, I take your fingerprint, put it in, submit to the court. The court doesn't have a system to go out and verify that it's legitimate. So all of a sudden your neighbor house recorded under your name as a registered owner, if you will, unofficially. Right? So a lot of time, we as First American, we have to deal with that kind of, one of the fraud, right? We have to detect that these falsely recorded documents because, it's so easy here to record that. In India, it's different. It has to go through the government. It's all centralized. You have to make sure that somebody go out and verify and do this and that because people buy house with cash, right? So that's a big investment. They're not going to lose their cash because of somebody else, falsely recorded the document, right? So things like that, yes, we struggle a lot in the beginning. But like I said, in the last 5 years especially, it picked up a lot because we spend so much investment in training the domain to our software engineer there. But back to your question, does it mean that it's stealing the job of software engineer or not? I used to think that way, but it's not really, right? The way I think is the following. Software developer, and Harrison, after he left First American, he worked with a couple of other companies, including some consulting companies, and he can tell you how hard it is to get a good software engineer, right? So back to the point I mentioned earlier, if you're really good and really excited, enthusiastic what you do, there's tons of job for you. I can tell you that every time I have opening, I don't always have opening, but when I have opening, I struggle to find the candidates that I want to select, right? So if you're good, you really just what you do, you're gonna have tons of offer, I guarantee you, you know? And I'm dying whenever I have an open position to find the right candidate. And that's one of the things I like about, I keep, connection with people like Harrison, because especially now he pursued this new career path, right? He set his own school, he tried to give education to people like you guys. And one of the things is I like because, he was my top developer, my top lead developer, say. And I really value his contribution to my team, his intelligence, as well as discipline and everything else, right? And that's what speaks a lot. So I trust him. The way you get a job is you go to a situation where you say, hey, you get people who get good connection to other employers, and you go through and learn from him and become a very valuable player in the future. And I tend to, when I have openings, and we hire one person from Madison like probably 7-8 months ago already. And then we have a recent opening from one of my peer manager that he had an opening. He asked me, and I said, hey, go and check out with Harrison. He can pass you some good candidates, right? Right? Because that's all about. We value people who we work with in the past, that we know that these are certain traits or characters people look. So, kind of long answer to your question, but really, it doesn't mean that you lose opportunity here. There's limited people of graduating from software engineering in this market in the U.S. itself. A lot of people graduating from software engineering, we all have a dream job. We want to Silicon Valley. We want to get a job at Google and Facebook and all those. Most of us don't get there, right? That's okay, as long as we're happy with what we do. There's tons of jobs. Like I said, in the business sector alone, companies like First American is a very good company, Fortune 500, that is very stable, 126 years of history. You work at a startup company, they may go away the next day, you never know. I have people working for me, and they came back and told me they tried a couple of startups around here, and they suffer a lot for 5-6 years, taking a low salary, hoping the stock will hit it someday, and it never hit. And then he ended up just taking a job in similar First American job, so that he has a family to feed, right? He has kids to go to school, things like that, right? So there's always a company like First American. I guarantee you, especially nowadays, there's still the industry of a lot of financial company or non-high-tech company, if you will, that they really need to automate their workflow, right? So that they can do things more efficiently. So they have a need to hire people here, right? They always started with hiring people here, because you guys have the clear advantage of being here physically. As you all know, when you have face-to-face communication, it's 10 times better, right? A lot of time, even when you talk to phone, you talk to your girlfriend or your friend, sometimes the message doesn't carry correctly, right? Sometimes got misunderstood. But you in face-to-face, you look at the eyes of the person you talk to, it means a lot. You guys have the advantage being here, working with the business partners here, who people who define the requirement for your software, who work with them, and you can understand the requirement a lot better. So you have more opportunity to become a lead. And the model like First American work, at least in my team, is my software developer, even I hire a fresher, after a couple of years, they become a lead. Because I want them to nurture a small team of people offshore, right? Because they need to speak for myself, and if I'm busy, they need to speak up for whoever developers they work with in offshore, right? Offshore people, they can write email, they can do things, but they can never communicate to the business here as well as my lead people here, right? So there's always a need here. So I don't see how American corporations will do away by hiring strictly only offshore development team, right? And there's certain aspect of things that will be totally offshore that I can see of, like people like Intel and Microsoft, they have R&D projects. Things that are very well-defined scope. If you program for a chip, like Broadcom company, you have very good spec, you say, hey, I want the chip to do ABC, right? They hand that blueprint design over to offshore, then the software engineer over there just go and code it, right? Those things could be 100% offshore, but companies like First American, I don't see how. We will not survive without the software development, without a core team, right? Because a lot of times, like I say, it takes the domain knowledge and the technical knowledge and combine to deliver solution, right? You know, nowadays more global solution. Company like Uber, yeah, Uber expand to Asia, to other countries, so they kind of get the concept too. But companies like First America, it's very hard for people over there to get the business sense out of it. For you guys, even if you don't know about title, you come in within a week, you talk to, you know, you go sit down with a business person here, and they explain to you, here's how they do work in their domain, doing title policies. And you go back and say, oh, here's an opportunity to automate it. I can make it better. And that's another thing I want to mention, kind of related to your question earlier, is people like me looking for people to solve problems. Not like, I'm a soldier, just tell me what to do. I don't like that, right? As a developer, you should say, hey, I see that this is how the software is being written today. I see this is the deficiency in the system. I think we should make this change to make it better, right? That's what I'm looking for. Looking for people who say, hey, make suggestions. Don't just accept as is situation, right? Pick it up, understand, even though it's complex, learn it, and say, hey, we can do better, right? And a lot of time, if you think about it, I've been with First American for 20 years now. It's the same application you think about. The title, this is nothing different. It's been there for over 100 years, like I said, right? But I can tell you that every 2-3 years, we have brand new initiatives to do different things for similar objective, right? A lot of them coming from business, a lot of them also coming from a technical world. Giving you an example, we say, hey, we can do OCR, we can do automation, make it more efficient, right? We pitch the idea to business, hey, great, we can do faster, we can acquire more data, we can expand coverage in other counties where the key can never achieve within a year or 2-year time frame. With the automate solution, we can get it done in 3 months, right? Yes, it's gonna cost, you know, $100,000 or $500,000, whatever the cost of the project is. But the business saying, I can see that there's a ROI, there's a return on investment here. I can see within 5 years, I can be more efficient, right? They approve the project. See, that's what it is. You create job for yourself. All of a sudden, let's say you are the only developer at the moment to support the system, and you say, hey, here's another idea. They say, oh, it's a great idea. Let's go hire 5 more people. What do? Go hire 3 more developers here, 2 in offshore to support, things like that, right? So you create an opportunity. You know, that's why I want to send a message to people like you, because you should create your own opportunity for yourself, for your team, for people who you work with, right? Because that's what it is. It's, you know, don't expect people to hand the job to you. You know, once you're being hired, if you're lucky enough to end up somewhere that you really like to be your dream job, per se, don't stop, right? Continue to grow and contribute and expand, right? That will help. That's what I mean. I mean, when I was starting, I was the only one to support my application, right? For that particular application. Now I have 25 offshore developers and, you know, 9 people directly report to me. Not to mention when we have contracts, you know, I can work with, you know, another group of 10, 20 other contractors, software engineers to do projects, right? I didn't think that I would be working with that many individuals, many software engineers at the time I started this company. And really, like I say, the software that was doing the functionality and everything that it did 20 years ago, it's not so much different than what we do now in terms of business. But we came up with different ideas and thoughts and make the efficiency, create different module, make more automation and things like that. It create more opportunities, right? That's growth. That's how I see it, right? So a lot of time people look on outside, hey, you know, offshore is take away job. They hire people from outside the country, take away American job, but not really. You know, you have to look at it from the other aspect of, hey, there's always option there. It's up to you to make it happen, right? So I hope I answered that
Excellent,
question.
yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah. Right. Anybody has any other questions? Feel free. How are we doing time? Double check, make sure. I think I have 1:30. Give me time. Yep. At 1:30, so I will take another 5 minutes if you guys have any more questions. No?
One more.
Go ahead.
You mentioned that you just really enjoyed the culture at First American. Can you speak to maybe why you enjoyed the culture there?
Yeah, like I said, it's really about my job, right? There's two things. Number is it's family. I look at the people who work at my company. I look at Rao. I've been there 20 years, and people say, why you been there so long? You should have tried to switch job and do something else. I say, why do I have to? I like what I do, and I do new things every other day I come to work, right? So that's why my answer is, I learn new things, I do different things every day. Number two, I look around, people have been there like 30, 40 years, they retire. And then some of them is like, that's the only job they do, right? That speaks a lot about First American in a sense that it's a stable company, it treats the employees well, right? It's not just myself, like a long-term one, but you know, it's also try to keep people being happy there and make sure that they are rewarded, make sure they are challenged to do different things every day, right? At least in my work, right? There's other people, they do it in the title business side of it. I can't speak for them. A lot of them in there because the process is well established, they like to do things the same old-fashioned way, whatever it is. I can't speak for that, right? But for people in my division, some of my developer that I manage, they grew up doing programming on the mainframe. You know, we migrate from the mainframe system to the distributed system 5 years ago. And I have my employee learn new technology, learn about SQL Server. There used to be DB2 on the mainframe, they learn about SQL Server. Same concept. As long as people are willing to learn, they continue, and that's what it is, right? If you think about it, some people work with the mainframe, they rather find another mainframe job. You don't have to, as long as you are willing to learn, right? That's what people at First American that we value as people. They're not complacent. They know it's a stable company, but yet they still continue to learn and expand their knowledge, so they continue to contribute and learn and improve for the company's value. Right? That's what I really like about it, is because I would tell you this, it's not high tech, right? It's not like you work like Google or Amazon, all the latest and greatest technology. I'm not gonna lie to you. It's not, it's not a job that you go in and you just do a data entry or support some, system that would it's developed 20, 25 years ago and you're stuck with it. So it's neither of the spectrum. It's somewhere in the middle, but it gives enough opportunity, it gives stability, it gives everybody at the end of the day, you have to get some money to survive, right?
Sure.
Especially in California, so the balance of all those factors is really what it is. I can tell you it's not get the highest paid on the market, I can tell you that. And we struggle with that with certain candidates too, because they ask for a lot more money, right? But at the end of the day, at least for me, money is not everything. You gotta go and work in a place where you have enough money that you think that you should earn to survive, to feed your family, to get enough what you want to have in your life, and be happy with it. You don't want to go work like being very, very horrible environment where you say, hey, I just go here don't want that. If you think about it, you spend at least 8 hours a day in that environment. The other 8 hours you're sleeping. Really, is you actually spend more time at work than being with your family, unfortunately, in a sense, right? If you think about it, there's 24 hours a day, but you're being at work a long time. So you better make it your home, in a sense that you really enjoy it, you really enjoy working with people you work with, and continue to excel. That's why, like I say, I've been here and I kind of joke with a lot of people, say, hey, you're still here? Yeah, I'm stuck here, but in a positive way. I'm stuck in this company where I really enjoy it, and because it gives me opportunity to grow. Right? So, and it's diversity. It doesn't discriminate against your background, who you are, whether against your race, against your ethnicity, against that. Oh, you don't speak perfect English, you have accent, whatever. Right? You can grow. You can be a director, a manager, if that's what you choose to do so, or you just want to continue to be like a system developer or a software developer, an architect. Whatever you do, you can choose your own career path, right? That's what I like about it, because the way I told my employees the following, I'm not their boss, right? That's the way how I think it. And a lot of people in First American think that way. We're not your boss. We just happen to do a management position. You are a software developer. You do slightly different position. We are working together to make things happen together, right? So you don't have to feel like, oh, I'm not gonna say this to my boss because he's not gonna give me the right raise, or he's gonna be, retaliating me later on. And that's what I like about this environment, because when we disagree, we speak up. Right? And I told my direct employees, hey, I don't want to come here hearing you tell me how great I am or good things I do. Those are the things that I understand is important, but I'd rather have you coming in and say, hey, we could improve here. Hey, by the way, you said this, I disagree with you, or you were wrong by saying this and whatever, right? I'd rather have people challenge me because they are very enthusiastic about what they do and they fight for the right things. I value those people because they're not afraid of fighting for the right reason, right? And that's what it is. When you write code, I don't want people to think about, oh, I'm gonna hide this bug because I cannot solve it. So I'm gonna put some exception catch in here and so that it doesn't blow up. But really, it just go to the black hole. So nobody's gonna catch it. Only I know, right? I don't want people who work for me to think like that. I'd rather have them walk up to me and say, hey, we have a big problem. If we don't solve this, the system will crash, right? Because hiding it is just, can only hide for so long. At some point, it's gonna be exposed. It's gonna blow up. It's gonna, somebody's gonna trigger it, right? And it's gonna crash in a big way. So that's how I look at that, and that's what I like about working in First American. We're open-minded. We work together. That's a problem. Just bring it up. We'll solve together. Sometimes it takes months to solve. That's okay. We're being honest and we try to solve problems together. Right. Anything else? Anybody? One last question? No? Anyone else?
All right, thanks, Ian.
All right.
Thanks for everything. Appreciate the time, and we'll talk to you about that open position soon.
Okay, cool.
Okay,
All
awesome.
right,
We'll walk
good to
through
see you.
that.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.